Imagine walking into a building, the walls echoing with the noise of construction and the smell of old concrete dust. Workers digging through decades-old debris uncover something they were never meant to find: a human skull, bound and tied, lying in a basement beneath a forgotten concrete slab. But this isn't just any discovery. It's a chilling mystery that has remained unsolved for over 2 decades, one that would take years of painstaking investigation to even begin to piece together. This is the shocking case of Patricia McLoon, a woman whose brutal murder would be hidden beneath the streets of Midtown Manhattan for more than 20 years. The discovery would spark an investigation that raised more questions than answers. Who was she? How did she end up buried there? And most chilling of all, who killed Patricia McLoon? This is a story of heartbreak, secrecy, and twisted truths that kept investigators at the edge of their seats. And it all begins with a gruesome find in a city that never forgets its secrets. Let's start with the victim, Patricia Kathleen McLoon, a name that, until recently, was nothing more than an entry in a cold case file. Born in 1953 in Brooklyn, Patricia's life was anything but ordinary. Her family was plagued by turmoil, and though her life was filled with promise, it would soon take a dark and unexpected turn. Patricia's parents, like many in the 1950s, had their own struggles. Her mother, Patricia Sr., tried to shield her children from the chaos that seemed to swirl around their lives. But Patricia's path was already veering toward a tragic end long before she disappeared. Patricia dropped out of school on May 6, 1969, at just 16 years old. No one knows exactly what led her to abandon her studies, but it would be the last time anyone saw her alive. Her absence went unnoticed by everyone except her family. It wasn't until years later that her disappearance would finally be linked to the haunting discovery of a body in Midtown Manhattan. The building where Patricia's body was found had once been the site of the most iconic nightclub in Manhattan, the infamous Steve Paul's The Scene, where legends like Jimi Hendrix and The Doors graced the stage. A place where celebrities, artists, and musicians came together to revel in the nightlife of the city. But the glamour of the past could not hide the dark secrets buried beneath it. In 1997, construction workers at 301 West 46th Street began tearing down the old building to make way for new development. As they worked, something horrific was unearthed: human remains. Wrapped tightly in layers of carpeting and bound with an electrical cord, Patricia McLoon had been brutally murdered, then discarded like trash. But this wasn't just any murder, it was a mystery waiting to be solved. A case that would baffle investigators for decades. The discovery of Patricia's body was just the beginning. At first glance, the case seemed like an open and shut homicide. She was strangled, left to die in a horrible, violent way. But the more investigators dug into her past, the stranger the case became. There were no clues to her identity at first: no papers, no records, no reports of her being missing. The workers found a few key items among the remains: a ring with the initials PMCG engraved on it, a watch, and a dime from 1969. But these small items weren't enough to solve the case. All they did was create more questions. Who was Patricia? Why was she there? And why hadn't anyone reported her missing? As investigators began to delve into Patricia's life, they uncovered more twists and turns. Her mother, in a rare interview with police in 1970, mentioned that Patricia had possibly been pregnant. But who was the father? And why had Patricia been so hard to track down? Then there was Patricia's half-brother, who had a troubling history of criminal activity. Could he have had something to do with her disappearance? What role did he play, if any, in her brutal murder? The building itself became another important clue in the case. It was once home to the most popular nightclub in New York, where legends of the music world rubbed elbows with socialites and celebrities. Patricia may have had ties to this world, but it was clear that her life had spiraled downward, and no one was there to save her. But the biggest question remained. How had Patricia ended up buried under a concrete slab in a basement all these years later? Just when investigators thought they were at a dead end, a breakthrough came that no one saw coming. In 2021, DNA technology advanced enough to crack open the case in ways that were previously unimaginable. A family member of a woman killed on September 11th came forward, and their DNA led investigators to a shocking conclusion. Patricia McLoon was not just another unidentified victim, she was connected to this person, linked through family ties that no one had known about. The revelation that Patricia McLoon was actually the woman behind the name Midtown Jane Doe was a shocking twist in itself. But that wasn't the only twist. The most chilling discovery came when police identified Patricia's husband, Donald Grant, as a person of interest. Donald, a musician, had lived in the very building where Patricia's body was found, the same 301 West 46th Street address. The marriage license from May 1969 confirmed that Donald Grant was Patricia's 32-year-old husband, a man who had never been questioned. The more the investigation progressed, the more questions arose. Was Patricia's husband involved in her death? Had he played a part in hiding her body beneath the very building that had once been the heart of Manhattan's nightlife? This new lead turned the investigation on its head, raising more disturbing questions than ever before. Donald Grant, a man with deep ties to the very scene where Patricia was found, had remained under the radar for over 50 years. How could he have escaped suspicion for so long? And did his life as a musician in the world of New York's elite have something to do with Patricia's tragic end? As the investigation into Donald Grant heats up, a new and unsettling development emerges. Patricia's child, the one she may have been pregnant with when she disappeared, has vanished as well. Was the baby born? Was it adopted? Where is Patricia's child now? But the answers aren't easy to come by. The search for Donald Grant has become a race against time, and investigators are more determined than ever to uncover the truth. As they track down leads, one thing becomes clear. Patricia's murder was no random act of violence. It was a carefully planned execution by someone close to her, a person who knew exactly where she was, what she was doing, and how to silence her forever. With Patricia's child still missing, and no sign of Donald Grant, the investigation is left hanging in the balance. Will the truth ever be uncovered? Will Patricia's murderer finally be brought to justice? The case of Patricia McLoon, the Midtown Jane Doe, is far from over. And as more secrets are revealed, the chilling truth may be closer than we think. But for now, the search continues. The mystery remains unsolved, and we are left wondering, who killed Patricia McLoon? And where is her child? The search for Patricia McLoon's murderer has led investigators down a path filled with more questions than answers. With Donald Grant, Patricia's husband, now the prime suspect, and her child still missing, the investigation took a shocking turn. But just when the case seemed to reach a deadlock, a breakthrough arrived, one that would flip everything on its head. In a turn of events no one saw coming, a new piece of evidence would unravel the investigation and raise even darker questions. The case that once seemed solvable now teeters on the edge of chaos. Was Donald Grant really the killer? Or is there a deeper conspiracy lurking in the shadows? Detectives had been digging through Donald Grant's past for weeks, but he remained elusive, his trail colder than ever. No one had seen him in years. His name wasn't even in the records of the 9/11 victims' DNA match that had initially cracked the case open. The search for Patricia's child had hit yet another dead end. All signs pointed back to 301 West 46th Street, the nightclub-turned-apartment building that had been home to both the victim and her husband. But then, late one evening, a new lead surfaced, a small clue, seemingly insignificant, but one that would completely change the course of the investigation. A local pawn shop owner came forward, claiming to have seen a man matching Donald Grant's description trying to sell a vintage watch shortly after Patricia's death. The watch, the same one found with Patricia's remains, had been in the pawn shop system for decades. The shop owner swore he recognized Grant from years before selling the watch for a meager sum of money. But why would someone desperate enough to get rid of such an item not just let it go but risk exposing themselves at all? As the pawn shop lead unraveled, the team revisited Patricia's past, combing through old records, hoping to dig deeper into her mysterious disappearance. It was then that an investigator uncovered something that completely shattered the case. A journal, hidden inside an old, unused suitcase in the back of Patricia's mother's closet. Inside, Patricia had written about her life in a series of personal entries. The diary revealed shocking details about her troubled relationship with her husband, Donald Grant, but it also included something far more sinister. Patricia had known she was in danger. She had written about overhearing conversations between Donald and a mysterious man, a stranger she referred to only as S. The final entry read, "I'm scared. I can hear him in the other room planning something. I don't know how much longer I can keep quiet. He's going to hurt me. He said if I ever told anyone, he'd make me disappear. And I don't think he's joking anymore." The last words Patricia ever wrote confirmed what investigators feared. Patricia was terrified of someone, but it wasn't just her husband. She was terrified of someone else. Now, everything about the case, the identity of the murderer, the reason Patricia's body was discarded under the nightclub's basement, and the missing child was in question. The mysterious man Patricia had written about had never been identified. Was this someone from Donald Grant's past? Or was it someone entirely different, someone who had remained hidden, pulling strings in the background? The case was beginning to spiral out of control. Investigators, once confident that they had everything they needed, were now caught in a web of false leads, contradictory clues, and shifting motivations. Patricia's disappearance and murder were more complex than anyone had realized. With the shocking revelation of S lurking in the shadows, the risks for everyone involved, law enforcement, the victim's family, and even innocent bystanders, were growing by the day. Detectives tracked down Donald Grant's old associates, hoping to uncover something about his past that would link him to Patricia's murder. As they dug deeper, they discovered a pattern of violent outbursts, unexplained disappearances, and strange relationships tied to one man S. Finally, an informant came forward, claiming that S was none other than a notorious New York gangster, someone who had been a regular at the scene, a man feared by both the music world and the underworld. S was a figure of power, connected to criminal networks, but his name was rarely spoken in public, and his existence was more whispered about than openly discussed. Suddenly, the pieces began to fit together. Donald Grant had been in debt to S, deeply involved in a criminal scheme that Patricia had stumbled upon, one she couldn't ignore. But what had happened between them that led to Patricia's brutal death? The dark web of lies, deceit, and fear was thickening, and the investigation was reaching a fever pitch. Just when things seemed to be at their darkest, an anonymous tip sent the investigation into overdrive. The tipster, remaining faceless and shrouded in secrecy, directed detectives to an old storage unit in Queens, one that had been rented by none other than Donald Grant himself, just weeks after Patricia's disappearance. Inside the unit, investigators found a hidden trove of evidence that tied everything together. Photos of Patricia's husband with S, documents detailing illegal activities, and worst of all, a handwritten confession from Donald Grant himself. The confession revealed the truth. It wasn't just Patricia he had been involved with, it was a whole criminal enterprise. Patricia had been caught in the crossfire when she discovered secrets that she wasn't meant to know. Donald Grant had become an unwilling pawn in a deadly game of power, money, and deceit. He had been trying to escape, but the cost was his wife's life. The real killer wasn't just one person, it was a collaborative effort, a conspiracy of lies, betrayal, and murder. But in the end, Donald Grant had been the one who betrayed Patricia most cruelly. He had silenced her before she could expose the full extent of the criminal organization they were both trapped in. With the confession now in hand, the authorities finally made their move. Donald Grant was arrested, and his past, filled with lies and betrayal, was finally brought to light. But the mystery didn't end there. Patricia's child was found, safe, living with a distant relative who had been unaware of the connection to the crime. As for S, the notorious gangster who had been lurking in the shadows, his identity remained a mystery, though his influence was undeniable. Investigators continue to search for him as more evidence from the underground network surfaces. Patricia McLoon's murder has been solved, but the case is far from over. The tangled web of criminality, secrets, and tragedy leaves us with more questions than answers, and the hunt for justice is far from finished. Now, with Donald Grant behind bars, Patricia's family can finally begin to heal, but the scars of this horrific story will never fade. Like, share, and subscribe for more updates on this case and other unsolved mysteries. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Patricia's story is truly over, or are there still more secrets to be uncovered? Stay tuned for more updates as this investigation continues to unravel.